This is Tell Me What It's Like, a show about life-changing decisions, extraordinary challenges, and defining moments. I'm Stacey Rain. Christina King remembers the day that her mom looked at her and asked her if she was happy. She wasn't. She was a teenager. She was super involved. She was in sports. She had good grades. She was in demanding classes. All the things that seem to make a successful teen. But she was not feeling happy at that moment. In fact, she was starting to feel a little depressed. So her parents signed her up for therapy. And in many ways, it was a life-changing experience. She's now a therapist in California, specializing in teen and tween girls, and says that she's turned into who she needed when she was a teen. Christina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Stacey. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. I want to talk about teens and tween girls and parenting them right now and being a teen and tween girl therapist. But first, I want to go back to this sort of pivotal moment in your life when your mom stopped you and said, "Are you happy?" What was going on?
I was just like struggling. And I think there's so many confounding factors that contributed to it. I think, as you were saying, it's like I was involved. I was doing so many things. And at the time, I was like undiagnosed ADHD. The diagnosis actually came later in life. And so I was like struggling to keep up, struggling to just like stay involved, stay social, stay with all these responsibilities. And then when I look back at it, I think we demand so much of our teenagers with such high stakes. And so I think I was feeling really behind and like started to feel really isolated and alone in this experience and just like felt like I was failing a lot. And so it kind of contributed to ultimately depression, where I like didn't enjoy the things and I was irritable and I was angry and I was snippy and I was snappy and I was just unpleasant to be around. And so kind of in the middle of a fight with my mom, that's when she was just like, "Are you happy? Like, are you okay?" And I just like all came out and I was like, "No, I'm not."
How lucky are you, though, that your mom recognized that and knew to ask you?
Yeah. No, it was so lucky. And I think it was really just like a flippant kind of question and an argument. And then it was also the exact question I needed in that moment. And thankfully, she had like a friend that was in therapy and with the specific therapist I saw. And so she was like, "I think this person would be a great fit for Christina," because the mom knew me really well. And so it just like, yeah, I just remember how it felt. And like, it was amazing.
So she happened to know somebody that was a therapist or knew somebody who knew somebody. So she like kind of knew where to go.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes, exactly.
You said something just now. You said that, you were snippy, you weren't fun to be around. I mean, I would imagine I was like that too as a teen. So I'm a mom of boys, as you know, and I hear so often, "Well, lucky you," when they're teenagers. I don't know how true that is. I don't have teenagers yet. But my point is, it doesn't sound like that snippiness and unfun to be around is an uncommon thing for teens.
Definitely not. And that's where, I mean, I'll speak just briefly to like what's happening during the teenage years, where essentially the limbic system and the emotional system of our brain is getting like a huge remodel and remake, which is really great. But it also makes teenagers like really emotionally volatile, where they're like going up and down, up and down, up and down.
Okay.
And the irony is like that's actually a good sign if they can switch around moods very quickly, right?
Oh,
and
why?
so we're really looking at why is because it's the brain, right? And it's getting that involved. So it's more concerning when they're constantly irritable or like constantly kind of depressed or isolated. So it's more of those like extremes or not going through the like up, down. With that said, though, is like the up, down is a lot for parents and it's also a lot for teenagers. So like if your teen is like, "I would love to speak to someone," I'm like, I encourage you to follow through on that. Like you don't need to be depressed to talk to someone.
Oh, it's interesting. Yeah. So they're having the up, down, just having someone to go to.
Yeah.
Is it important for them to have someone to go to that's not mom or dad?
100%. Yes.
Okay.
Because this is also where like developmentally they are looking to make community and relationships outside of their family, which is why like parents can breathe or just like chew and it's irritating to the teenager, right? It feels like anything you do, you're just like stuck in this box, which is really hard for parents because it's like you're just living your life normally and they have a problem with it essentially, right?
Right.
And so that's where it's like sometimes they can feel like I'm allergic as a parent, but having an adult, whether it's even like aunts, uncles, like friends, like other adults in their life that are caring and that they can talk to is important. If
Yeah.
it's not that family structure, or sometimes even if it is like, I don't want to talk to Aunt Lucy because she might tell you something, right? And so sometimes that
Mm-hmm.
therapy relationship just adds that like sense of structure and protection around confidentiality that teens can really enjoy and appreciate.
That makes sense. When you said that parents can just breathe and it gets on on the kids' nerves, I can remember my mom singing in the car and me being like, "Mom, please
Yeah,
stop." And
100%.
now when I sing in the
Yeah.
car to my kids, I'm like, they probably hate this. I don't care. I'm gonna sing,
No.
but they probably hate
Sing your
this.
song. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
My poor
For me, it was like
mom.
my dad's sneeze. Oh, I can like
Ah,
still remember how much it just like dysregulated me.
yes. I need to go apologize to my mom for that one. Tell her she can sing all
Right.
she wants.
I
Do you
know.
find that parents are supportive of their teens wanting
Mhm.
to come and talk to you or therapists in general?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a divide. And I think I will say, like, probably compared to even like when I was going through school and through high school, like, there's been more momentum and shift towards like, yes, people are accepting and wanting this and willing for it. And I know sometimes too, from the parenting perspective, it's like they can breathe a little bit easier knowing their teen is talking to a trusted adult and like that trusted adult will like come to them if there's
Mhm.
something serious going on that they need to be involved with, right?
So you do
Um
that.
Yes. So that's where, and this is kind of the line I tell families is like confidentiality. And then, of course, there's like the legal side of like mandated reporting. It's basically safety, right? So, like threats of
Yeah.
harm to self or other people, child abuse, elder abuse, dependent adult abuse. And then, what
Mhm.
I say to teens and parents as well is like, if I'm seeing risky behavior that has potential long-term consequences and like risk
Mhm.
involved, then like we're going to work together to tell your parents about this and get them involved because at that point we need more support.
Yeah. That kind of feels like like you were saying, like a weight off for parents, knowing that somebody's
Yes.
there that's like a,
Mhm.
a sort of a safety net a little bit.
Yeah, right, because like, you know, the teenagers are gonna talk to me about, I'll say the, like, low level things that they're doing that are inherently, like, pushing some of the limits, pushing some of the boundaries,
Mhm.
and honestly, parents tend to be, like, somewhat aware of those behaviors, maybe not to the full extent, but, like, they have an idea of what their teen is up to most of the time, right?
Oh, okay.
But they also don't need to know every single detail of it. Unless it is like, okay, we are getting into dangerous territory here, like, you're really putting yourself in harm's way and you're not seeing those, and, like, I say with teens sometimes it's like all gas, no brakes, and I'm like, "If you're not gonna be able to break this yourself, we need to get parents to come in and, like, set some brakes too."
When you say all gas, no brakes, like what exactly
Mhm.
do you mean there?
It's essentially speaking to the novelty and the risk-taking side of
Mm.
things, and so that's where, again, we're looking at the brain, looking at the emotional systems, and they're seeking that novelty and sensation, and so that's why teens are more likely to be more risky than I would say, like, you and I would be.
Yeah. So is that's kind of normal for teens is to have that
Mhm.
sort of boundary pushing, risk taking behavior?
Yes,
Why?
absolutely, and it's all just with their brain and what it's doing, and it's like they need more stimulation essentially to, like,
Okay.
kinda get that, and that's kinda where sometimes with parents, I'm like, choose your fights you're gonna pick, but also, like, pick the fights, because if you don't pick the little fights, they're gonna find and look and try to reach what you will pick a fight with and for.
Really? Oh
Mhm.
man, I feel like you're telling me
Yeah.
what's ahead. Again, boys, but I'm sure boys are
Oh, yeah.
somewhat similar.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
yes. The risk-taking is just gonna look a little different, but it's still gonna be there.
it already does. It really already
Yeah.
does. Um,
Yeah.
so okay, so let's say a parent calls you up, "Hey, my teen could use somebody to talk to."
Mhm.
Are teens are the teens calling you or are the parents calling you?
That's where it's a little bit of both. Like,
Okay.
I probably say, like, half my messages come in and they're like, "My kid's super open, I brought this up, they really wanna do this." Sometimes it's, like, even teen initiated where, like, they'll go to the parents asking for this.
Yeah.
And then you also get the teens where it's like, "My parents are driving me to be here, I don't wanna be here, I don't even know what to talk about, I have nothing to talk
Oh.
about, everything's fine." And it's like, "Okay, well, you're skipping school and drinking, like, everything is clearly not fine, but, like, what's going on?"
Do they open up?
Over time, and that's
Yeah.
where, teens tend to be, and I think understandably so, like more protective with their information compared to like adults, where it's like, if you're going to therapy because you want to and for a reason. And they tend to be like, first session, here's my life story, here's everything you need to
Yeah.
know. Whereas teens, that we call it in therapy like the rapport building process, can take a little bit longer. So usually and hopefully at like 4 sessions, 6 sessions, 8 sections, you're like getting some traction and able to like, at least for myself, be able to read them a little bit more, kind of how to go about the pacing and things like that.
Have you experienced, I'm guessing you probably have. So what's it like when you experience that breakthrough of a teen who comes in, it's like, I don't want to be here, but you're like, you need to be here. And your parents are like, they need to be
Mhm.
here.
Mhm.
What is that moment like? You said it's 6 to 8 sessions sometimes to break
Oh,
down that
yeah.
barrier. What are those moments
And
like?
it like, I try not to show it on my face too much because I know it'll
Oh,
just shut them down, but inside, I am just, like, beaming and, like,
yeah.
so excited, and it tends to be, like, a super random day where all of a sudden, it all comes out,
Mhm.
and then the very next session, they're zipped right back up, and it's back to just, like, shooting the shit
Really?
or, like yeah, and so it's very interesting in that regard where it can be very, like, up, down, and you don't at least for I'll say for myself, it's like, oftentimes with clients like that, I'm like, I have no idea what the session's gonna be, if they're gonna be really resistant and not saying anything, if they're gonna pour everything out, or if it's just gonna be, like, yappy and we're playing Uno or something kinda more, like, relational in that regard.
Oh, so you'll, like, play games to try to kinda open the lines of
Yeah.
communication. That's smart, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and the other thing too I'll say with teens that I find really funny is, like, I joke that our best sessions are when they're, like, playing games or, like, laying down or just that, like, something allows the barrier to drop a little bit more, and I always laugh because when I've parents in, they'll often be like, sit up," like, "That's disrespectful, don't lay down," or like, "Don't why are you grabbing the blanket?" And I'm like, "That's the only way they're gonna talk, like, please let them do this," like, and
Oh,
so it's
yeah.
just that, like yeah, I think the, like, what we kind of professionally and relationally seek is, like, that's inappropriate. Teens are like, "No, this means I'm comfortable."
Wow, okay, that's good, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, I know my kids I've got a tween I don't know, is 11 a tween, I guess?
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and I know that at bedtime, if I just go in there and I read beside
Mhm.
him or something, I'll get, they come home from school and I'll say, "Hey, how was your day?" "Oh, fine."
Yeah.
And it's not they
100%.
just literally don't have they just haven't thought about what to tell me, but it's like when they've
Yeah.
relaxed and
Mhm.
whatever, they'll start to
Mhm.
tell me things. Not it
Yes.
just might be like, "Oh, this is what I did today," or that's what it's just
Yeah.
so it makes me think, okay, playing games with them, which we do, is probably more of a relaxing that could be one of those opportunities, a tip for parents, right?
Totally. Yeah. I always say it's like before bed tends to be a really like hot time for teens to open up. In the car can surprisingly be it. And I think because you're just
Mm,
like not looking at each other, there's usually like a contained like you're coming home or whatever it is. And there's a set amount of
yeah.
time that they know that they're gonna exit. And then yeah, whether it's just like going out and about, like just doing things that are kind of outside of your routine where you're not just like school to school, right? There's nothing to add, nothing to take away.
Yeah. Okay. That's some good tips. Um, so this might be a tricky question because it sounds like you might have a couple of different styles of first meetings, but with a
Mhm.
teen, when what happens in
Mhm.
that first session?
Yeah. First session, I often invite like the teen and the parent back. Um, Usually the first like 15 minutes there, it's mostly the parent talking and where it's like I'll be like running through confidentiality, expectations, like and a lot of it is also like I want the teen to hear it, but I also want the teen to hear it in front of their parent, right? So it's
Mm,
like I'm telling the parents there are no secrets here between you and I and the teen, right? So it's like parents don't get to reach out to me, email me, and then say essentially like, don't tell client, but da 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 da, right?
mhm,
And so
mhm.
part of that is a way to help build that trust and rapport with the teen of like, mom and I aren't going to be colluding on the side or like determining treatment on the side, right?
Yeah.
Um, but also it's like as parents, it's like you want to update the therapist. And I always encourage them to do so, just that teen will be informed, right? And so that's something that like I kind of run through what I call those like housekeeping items. And then I hear a little bit of like from parents, like, what are your concerns? What are you seeing? And then I always end with just like, what do you absolutely adore and admire about your kid? And I love that
Oh,
because
that's
the
good.
parents usually cry and teen usually gets really uncomfortable and like kind of cries. And so it's just so lovely to like see the love between them. And then from there though, I'll ask the parent to leave. And then usually I start off with like, mom and dad said this, this, and this. Like, do you agree or do you disagree? And that's usually a
Mhm.
good way to kind of get them talking about what's been going on.
Oh, okay. And then what's for a teen who's come in, like, where are you going? I'm guessing sometimes you think back to your experience in high school with a therapist. Like, what are you trying to get them to learn? Like, is it always um, situational or person based, or is it like these are things that I need to make sure I teach every single teen?
Yeah, it's what I say is like a little bit of both. And I think more generally, and especially how I view therapy with teenagers, is like they are being asked and demanded of in every realm of their life. And in so many ways, they don't have control, whether it's like they're academically focused, even if they're not academically focused, like they
Mm-hmm.
still have to be there, they still have to show up, they still have to take the test, they still have to do the homework. Like they still have all those requirements, right, from their teachers.
Yeah.
Sports, they have sports in terms of like, need to show up, need to be there, you have expectations, coaches, teammates. And then parents, you have that. And then socially, you have that. And so in all these different realms, we're being pulled, right? And therapy gets to be this space where it's like, who are you? What do you want? And allowing them to really step into like what they are and who they are in a way that feels good for them and managing kind of the outside responsibilities. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's how I look at like therapy with teens as a whole. But then kind of when you said like more specifically with individual students and kids, it's like they're all going to be looking to grow in one area or another and trying to understand what that exactly is and how do we
Mm-hmm.
get them to those goals. Because some kids, it's like, I'm really good at socializing. I have a lot of friends. I go to parties and maybe do more risky behaviors. And it's like, okay, we need to temper that down a little bit and maybe focus because you say you're academically focused, but the behavior isn't showing it, right? So learning how to kind of balance that. Some it's the opposite, right? Where it's like, I'm so academically focused and so perfectionistic that all these other realms of my life are neglected, right? And so
Yeah.
that's where it's really just looking to have balanced humans.
So you're helping them sort of see that, like connect those
Hmm.
dots of, oh, if I want to reach these goals, I can't be doing these party behaviors and things
Yeah.
like that.
Mhm. Totally. And
Interesting.
having that be kinda coming from inside and those internal I kinda mentioned the all gas, no brakes. It's like helping them build those brakes in for themselves so that they can attain their specific goals, as well as then, like, you know, parents, of course, are gonna play a role in that, but I'm like, "You don't wanna be fighting with your parents about this all the time, do you?" Like, what do you
Yeah.
need to do to get your parents off your back a little bit too?
Right. Yeah, I saw you're active on social media, which is cool. It's how I
Mhm.
found you. And I remember one of the posts I saw, you were like, here's sort of what I'm hearing in therapy. And it's like, oh, I got into college. Oh, I was able to do this
Mhm.
thing. So you're literally goal
Mhm.
setting with them and
Mhm.
working towards that in a holistic way. That's neat. You
Yeah.
said the kids these days, there's so many demands on them. Do you feel like it's more demands than ever? Like, are we sort of in a normal way of living teen lives, I guess? Or is it
Yeah,
harder than
I
ever?
think so, 'cause I will also, like, asterisk this where I'm like, Manhattan Beach is a very high achieving area, and
Which is where
so
you
there
are. Yeah.
is a narrative around, like, what success looks like and how you get there, and it's very academically driven.
Mhm.
And at the same time, when we're looking at colleges and these elite colleges that a lot of my students are looking to attend, it's you can't just be an academic. You also need to be this, 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 this.
Yeah.
And then you just break it down, and I look at 24 hours in a day, right? In our typical day. I'm like, you're in school 7 hours.
Mhm.
Oftentimes you have sports that are like, what, 2 hours a day, right? So right there, we're at 9 hours. And then you have how many hours of homework, right? And it's often hours of
Mm,
homework, right? So right there, we're pushing 10 to 12 hours of like required focus from these kids, right?
right.
Not to mention then if you have family responsibilities, if you're working, if you have volunteer, if you have clubs, if you have friends, right? And so that's a lot to demand on an underdeveloped brain, right?
Mm.
And so I think we ask a lot of our kids this way.
And then I have to bring up, obviously, the rise of social media, which
Yes.
did not exist when I was a teenager. I
Mhm.
often say to friends, my husband, or I'm like, I'm really glad that didn't exist. It feels like I mean, there's so many
Mhm.
reasons why it must be so difficult for teens these days just with social media
Yes.
alone.
Oh, yes. And I mean, it's funny you say that because I was going through high school and like Instagram, I think, came out. I don't even know if that's the word for it, but like
Mhm.
I remember being like, I think it was like a sophomore in high school. And it was like, we were kind of the like classic generation where we would be in the Apple store taking the photo booth images and they were silly and they were fun and like somewhat embarrassing, when you look
Yeah.
back at it now. And then the other day, like literally a week ago, I was in the Apple store and I just like kind of was like, I'm curious, like, do kids still come in and like take photos on photo booth? And they were like, not at all. And I was like,
Ah.
whoa. But then I look at, the social media, the Instagram, and there is just the pressure that I think it puts on, let alone the conflict between, parents and, kids about social media. But then what they're seeing online, right? And I'll go to what you said about like getting accepted to college. Like that's always such an exciting moment. And I know for myself, I'm like, I remember the first college I got accepted, but on the moment that it happened and just like that feeling of like I'm going somewhere.
Mhm.
But then if you're having friends getting accepted, you're not getting accepted, or you're not getting accepted to your dream school, and you see other people online that you know or that you might not know having these
Yeah.
videos about it. And so it really amplifies the comparison culture because you can't get away from it, right? You don't get to
Yeah.
come home from school and forget everyone at school because they're in your face, right?
Yeah, the comparison culture, that's a really good phrase and something that even as a parent, I see more of these days and feel as a parent, I guess,
Mhm.
than I think my parents probably did. Because I know so much more about what everyone's
Yes.
doing around me.
Mhm. Yes. And kind of the double edge for social media, on the one hand, I think, like for maybe you or for me, it's like, it's nice to see that friend that you haven't seen in a while or talked to in a while. You see that family photo and you're like, oh my gosh, you look so happy. Like, love that.
Yeah.
Right. But we're also really manicuring
Right.
a image of ourselves. Right.
Mhm.
And so it's like, as adults, we can understand that nuance a little bit more. And I mean, I know even for myself, I'm like, I'll get into that sometimes where I'm like, oh my gosh, everyone's doing this and everyone's doing that. And I'm not this and I'm not that. And I literally have to stop myself and be like, you are comparing yourself to a manicured image that like may or may not really exist. And especially
Yeah.
looking in LA, it's like, I see stuff where it's like people like literally rent a private jet to just take photos on for an hour and then leave. And so it's like
Whoa.
yeah, like the most manicured image I could think of, right? So it's like it really isn't what you think it is, and you don't actually know what's going on. You just see one snapshot that might not be anything remotely close to what it really looks like.
Do you spend a lot of time explaining that to your clients?
I'll talk about that a lot. And with teens and social media, there's kind of, I think, twofold of it. There's what I'll say is the like, I think, adult perspective of like our dopamine system and our reward system and how those, devices and applications are targeting and tapping into that and trying to get us addicted to it so that we stay on it longer. But
Yeah.
then there's another side of it just from more of like a smaller community culture where it's like if you're seeing people getting to college, if you're in conflict, and this is something that I unfortunately see a lot with girls, is like they're posting online about each other. They're posting
Oh,
online about their family sometimes, like, they get into a fight with their parents, and then they're, like, posting online where they're using it partially to seek support, but in ways that are also bordering on cyberbullying, if not just full-blown cyberbullying.
yeah. So is that what you would say is one of the biggest challenges for teen and tween girls right now? Is it social media? Is it cyberbullying? Is it the mean girl phase, which has been around for probably ever?
Yeah.
What would you say is like the biggest thing?
It's so person to person, and I think it
Mm,
really is just, like, social media amplifies, and I think technology amplifies the issues that, as you kinda said, like, mean girl stuff, it's like, I I would argue probably most girls don't go through something or another, right? And so it
right.
just amplifies the dynamics that already exist, and it's harder to get away from because we have phones and we're on our phones, and so it's always
Mm-hmm.
in your face versus you leave school and you don't have to think about it. You're not involved with it
Yeah.
anymore.
I just
Mhm.
hadn't even really given a lot of thought to the fact that they can sort of take their family problems and their friend problems and start. I mean, obviously, I've heard of this before, but it hasn't
Ha
really been something I've spent a lot of time on. But that is just sort of
mm.
terrifying to think about from
It
all
is.
perspectives.
Yes. And then, and I'll see it sometimes too where it's like, it's I don't wanna say done so innocently, but it's like, I'm clearing the air, right? Because everyone's talking about this, and so here's my side of things, right? And then they're kind of posting this. And, it's hard to really, like, say it's wrong or it's right because how do you tell a teen that it's like, you can't do this even though other people are talking about you online, right?
Yeah.
And so it's tough for them to really grapple and understand the harm of it.
Oh, yeah. Well, so let's talk about some of these like major let's talk about some of the most common situations that you are helping teen girls
Mhm.
with and what
Mhm.
advice you give them and also for my parents out there who are listening
Mhm.
and who I know are really interested in what you have to say,
Mhm.
what can they do to support their teens that experience some of these things? So why don't we
Yeah.
start with the one that you talk a lot about, how I found you, which is
Mhm.
that mean girl phase.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And this is where, like, I I always joke with my clients where I'm like, I get really nitty-gritty with language where it's like a lot of that mean girl behavior is what we call like indirect aggression, right? And
Yeah.
I always try to like introduce that language, one, to like take it out of like we are labeling and identifying, especially it's like they're kids and we're hoping that we're all learning and growing. And I'm sure we've all,
Yeah.
engaged in these behaviors at one point or another. So it's like
Of course.
we want to not label specific kids as like bad apples, essentially, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
also want to be able to label the behavior because then, you know, I'll even say last night in a session, I, had a gal telling me about some stuff going on and I was labeling kind of some of the behavior of like relational aggression or social aggression that someone else was doing. And then she started sharing about her response. And I kind of looked at her and I was like, so I'm going to say that that's not indirect aggression. I think that's just overt aggression. And she kind of laughed
Mm.
and was like, yeah, it is. And
Mm.
so being able to label behavior in a way that's not shaming or making it out like you're a bad person now because of this, I think can add a lot of value where it's like we can talk about it at a lower stake and be able to edit and kind of change the behavior. And then we spend a lot of our session then, okay, how can we get your point across because you deserve to be angry and upset, but in a way that is also kind and respectful to you, but also to the other person.
Right. Yeah, that was actually when I was asking parents of girls what their questions were. It was like, hey, one of the questions was, how do I help my child understand how to tell someone I don't like that behavior without doing it in a mean way? So if a friend, so
Mhm.
the example she gave is that her child has a friend who tells white lies and it frustrates her
Mhm.
daughter. How do I help her tell
Mhm.
her, um, I don't like it when you lie, but without being mean? That was her question. So that sounds like
Yeah.
kind of what you're talking about.
Mhm. Absolutely. And, I always say it's like getting very specific with examples, right? And what I mean by examples is like, don't bring up you did this and then this and then this, right? It's like you don't
Mhm.
need the to-do list of grievances, right? But when,
Yeah.
in this case, right, it's like you kind of get hit with a light lie. Like in my head, I'm thinking like, okay, you said you told your friend you can't hang out because you're hanging out with your family, and then you're posting on social media that you're at the movies with another friend, right?
Yeah.
And that would understandably like might feel really hurt, might feel left out, might feel excluded, right? And then it breaks trust of like, I don't believe you now when you say this, right? So it's like the sting
Right.
is double. And so then part of that communication might be like, we always like to say like I statements, right? So like, I felt hurt when. And so then you're naming the behavior of like, when I saw you post online with another friend and you told me you were with your family, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
it's not naming you as a liar and you're a bad person because of it, but naming like, I was hurt when you engaged in this behavior.
Right. Okay. That's good. That's a good tip. So, what else should parents know about helping their teen through some of this stuff? Because, like you said, there are probably going to be times when their child is the one
Mhm.
that's making people feel that way. And then
Mhm.
there's going to be times where they themselves feel that way. This is just,
Mhm.
I'm guessing, I mean, I think even as adults, sometimes this happens, right? Like it's figuring out relationships, how
Mhm.
to navigate uncomfortable situations. A lot of
Mhm.
times we just avoid them because that's easier.
Mhm.
What do
Mhm.
you tell them? What do you tell parents?
Yeah. And, the number one thing I always tell parents is just like the biggest priority that I encourage is just like keep a good relationship with your kid. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, above all else, above disciplining, above like, trying to edit or critique behavior, like, start by trying to see things from their side. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
oftentimes, especially with teens, it's like there are so many underlying dynamics that are going on at that school, in that class, with that group that as adults, like, we just can't see or relate to, right? And
Okay.
so what I'll often, kind of start with is just like, tell me your side of things. What am I not understanding? What am I missing? Sometimes I'll ask questions like, how did your friends respond, right? Or like, you told so and so teacher, how did so and so respond, right?
Yeah.
And really just getting all the information from their side, because one, that's going to help them feel seen and heard, right? And
Mm-hmm.
once they feel seen and heard, that's going to kind of take us out of the emotional part of our brain and take us more into our like prefrontal cortex problem solving part of our brain. So from there, then I'll often ask like, are we still in our emotions or are we in problem solving? Right.
Oh,
And
okay.
I use these questions as a way to like gauge where they're at, but also like, and I think this is where as parents, it's like we miss a tune, we miss the mark. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so with parents, it's like we're coming in with problem solving and it's like, no, I'm still in vent mode. Right.
Mm.
And I think we can relate with that as adults. It's like you get home from work and you're just bitching about your boss or something.
Yeah.
And if your partner's like, well, why don't you just do this, this, and this? And you're like, I'm of
Back
course
off.
going to do that then. Yeah. But like, how rude of you to say that right now. Right.
Yeah.
I just want to be upset. And
Yeah.
teens are often that way too, where they're like, I just want to be upset. Let me be upset about this. Right. And let me say like all the terrible things that I'm not going to say to them, but I need to say to someone. Right.
Oh, okay.
And as adults, when we see teens talk like that, like we like, oh my gosh, no, like don't say that, don't do that, like, oh my gosh, no, right? But
Yeah.
like how many times have you been like, I'm gonna quit my job? And then you're like, don't actually just get up and
Right.
quit your job. Right.
Yeah.
So teens go through that too. And that's where I use these questions as a way to gauge where they're at. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
then once they're in problem solving mode, I might ask the question of like, do you want to hear my thoughts? Are you ready for feedback? Can I play the caring adult right now and give you an adult thought right now and kind of
Oh, you're
see
getting,
how they respond?
yeah, you're getting their
Getting the
permission.
buy-in.
Buy-in, that's a good word.
Mhm.
Well, so
Yeah.
I heard this from parents of teen girls.
Mhm.
But one of the questions they had for you is how do they show up for their teen or tween when she doesn't want
Mhm.
them around? When they've asked the question,
Mhm.
hey,
Mhm.
here's what it was. How do I navigate her not opening up? How was your day? Fine. How was practice? Fine. How was this?
Mhm.
Stop asking me questions. Get out of my room.
Mhm.
What do they do?
Totally. Yeah. And oftentimes, like, thinking about, like, the drive home from school, the drive home from practice, right? And it's like, you're tired, you're thinking about something. Like, imagine if, you got picked up from work and someone was asking you questions all about your day, and you're like, I'm literally just mentally trying to, like, decompress and process my day. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
ready to talk about it. So oftentimes teens say, like, snippy or, like, one-word answers when they're just like, I'm not ready to talk about it yet. That's kind of like I say, fine is code for I don't want to talk about it, right? And then it's
Mm-hmm.
looking like, how can we give you some space? And I do encourage them, like, give them that space, right? If they're like had a bad day, you can clearly see something's on their mind. Like, I don't know, offer to go get food together, offer to throw on their favorite show, offer to like take the dog for a walk, right? Like, just give them that time, give them that space, and then you can even say something when they're getting out of the car, like, hey, I can see you're upset. Like, do you mind if I come check on you in like an hour or two? Right? Or like whatever time that is.
That's brilliant. That's
And then
so
go from there.
smart because you've basically asked their permission. They've said yes. And so in their mind, they're like, okay, mom's going to come in an hour. I have an hour to decompress. Oh, I'm putting that one in my back pocket.
Good. Then we were also saying, like, I clearly see something's going on, right? Which is going to help them feel seen, right? But also simultaneously not pressured to like fix the emotion right away, right?
Right. Yeah, that is so smart. So other challenges that I know that parents are having to deal with teen girls is feeling left out is one thing I heard from them. I mean, again, like I know a lot of this stuff is going to happen with teen boys too.
Of course.
It's magnified with social media, but I can remember my friend said, oh, we're going to pick you up tonight. We're all going to go out and have fun. And they never came. They never came. They never called me.
Yeah.
I remember feeling crushed. I remember being like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be here with my boring parents all night,
Yeah.
It was terrible. I don't remember what happened after that or if I talked to my mom about it, but like, what do parents do? Now that's happening all on social media. They're at home and they're seeing the party happening.
Yes.
And they're not there because they weren't invited.
Yes. And they're seeing maybe even so-and-so that is not really in the group, but is at the party, right? And you're not. And so kind of to your point, it's like you're seeing it, you're watching it live, which makes it like a double hurt, right? Because like, back in the day, it could be like, well, maybe they just didn't go out or something, like almost giving yourself a little like white lie to like soften it a little bit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so now getting to your point, it's like you can't do that anymore. And, part of it is just going to be like nurturing that, like, that's really hard. That really sucks, right? And like it is. And there's no real way around it. There's no, we're going to make this hurt less by like, now we're going to go to the movies and you're going to pick a movie, right? Like, that's not going to hit the same. It's not going to hit, right? Because you're not their friends. You can't give them that sense of belonging from a peer group that they're seeking, right? And so this is where I say it's like, sometimes we can't change the emotion, but you can be there with them in the emotion, right? And you can still go to the movies or like have a family fun night, but just acknowledge, and this is where it's like with teens, it's like acknowledge as a parent, you're like, I know though that this isn't going to solve what just happened, right? But maybe it can distract you from it for the night, right? It can get your mind off of it for a little bit.
So you still can offer what you think is a fun alternative as long as you acknowledge. Because that would have been my go-to is like, all right, well, we're going to do something else because I'm going to make this night more fun than what it would have been with your friends.
Totally, right? And as a parent, you're like, it's probably going to be more fun for you, right?
Yes,
it's not necessarily going to be more fun for them, right?
Oh.
And this is where I think as parents, it's like acknowledging the limitations and acknowledging the role of like, you are the parent and that role is invaluable. They will never tell you how valuable you are, but it is invaluable, right?
Right.
And you can't be their friend. Probably don't want to be their friend, right? You're not 17, 13, whatever it is. So you can't just hit that same thing that a friend can hit, right?
Yeah.
And so the other thing with that, and this is kind of where like I'll say my work with girls then comes in, is like there are big events and there are small events. And being really keen and taking a keen eye to knowing the difference, right? And I think especially in girl world, like we really value that one-on-one dinner, right? We really value that in dive of like everything going on in your life, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? Yeah. We also value the fun party, right? Where we are socializing with everyone and it's upbeat, but it's, kind of, I'll say surface level conversation, right?
Yeah.
And so having that key distinction of like, what is that micro moment with your friend and what is that party moment with everyone? And, sometimes it's like, I feel like this will come up a lot with like dances, right? And so like, whether it's like a formal or an event like homecoming or, winter formal prom, I'm like, the taking pictures, the going to dinner, like something like that, that is likely going to be a big event, right? The Halloween party, whatever it is, right? Those are big events. Everyone gets
Yeah.
invited to big events. No one gets left out, right? You can make
Right.
small events in those if you're looking for that like memory with your best friend. And that might be like going to get your nails done together, going to shop for a dress or whatever it is together, right? And the key distinction is like big events get talked about openly, right? Small
Mm-hmm.
events, though, like you don't get to tell, this little group of girls, like, oh, yeah, let's all get our makeup done together or let's all go get our nails done together. And then only go with like one or two people, right? And
Yeah.
so having that distinction and then keeping that distinction of like, we're not going to talk about this at snack and lunch and, amongst the bigger group, like we're only going to talk about this privately.
Yeah. So it's you kind of guiding your child and helping to manage
hmm
those relationships.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
essentially setting guidelines of like what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. And there might be
Yeah.
times where it's like, okay, using your example, right? Where it's like your friends didn't come pick you up. Is that an oopsie or is that a pattern, right? If it's
Yeah.
an oopsie or a pattern, there might be different options, but ultimately it's like, can we address that? And maybe that's where we go back to like how we talk about our feelings appropriately of like, I was really disappointed when you didn't pick me up last night. Like, what was going on? Right. Or like, and sometimes it's just a simple sorry, right? If it's more of
Yeah.
a pattern though, and we're looking at more like, okay, your child is putting a lot of effort into a relationship and they're not getting any effort back. Like, talking about like, strong relationships are reciprocal. And right now I'm seeing a
Yes.
pattern where it's not reciprocated, right? And kind of helping them then maybe find and extend to new groups.
Yeah. That's one thing I saw that you've spoken about online. And I think that is so important. And I know that kids who, they go to school with this group and then they play sports with this group, or typically they kind of
Yes.
fare a little better because they've got these different
Yes.
people they can rely on.
Yes. And sometimes even too, when
Um,
you were talking about those different groups, like sometimes it's like you're not necessarily in the drama, but like there's something going
mhm.
down between other people and it's kind of creating some tension. And it's like you have other groups where there's not tension involved. And that's a nice place to be.
Yeah. This makes me think a lot about how sometimes as parents, um, I know I can feel like, okay, I've got to get them to school. I've got to make sure they're dressed. They brush. It's all these sort of like things I have to do every
Yeah.
day to make sure that they can do the things that they have to do. But
Mm-hmm.
my main role is teaching them how to
Mm-hmm.
live life,
Mm-hmm.
in a way that I guess helps them be successful and happy and all
Mm-hmm.
the things that we want them to
Yeah.
be. It's to help them grow
Mm-hmm.
into really great adults. And so a lot
Yes.
of what I'm hearing you saying is is we have to know the strategies so we can sort of teach our kids these strategies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is very, very helpful stuff, even for me as a mom of boys.
Yeah.
Um, some other things I heard from from parents of girls is that I don't know if this is like a these days thing or this has always been going on, but um, younger and younger, maybe they're starting to get into trends that are for maybe older
Mm-hmm.
girls. They're getting
Mm-hmm.
into skincare has been a big thing I've heard with
Oh,
tweens now.
yes.
Um,
Yes.
what are your thoughts
Mhm.
on that? How do they kind of navigate that with their tween?
Yes. That is such a great example, and especially skincare, right? Because there are some skincare products that are just gonna be actively harmful to, like, young skin,
Yes.
right?
Right.
And are meant and created for someone else. And this is where, we talked a little bit about, like, having them be able to speak to trusted adults, but this was something I was actually putting together a, presentation about kind of the teenage years. And during this presentation, I thought back to my mom, and she took me to I don't even remember exactly what it was, but kind of this lady, and she showed me like my colors. She showed me how to do makeup, and it was like a fun like mother-daughter day. And then all of a sudden I was like, "Oh my God, I think my mom was essentially trying to get me to stop doing the like terrible all black eyeliner that just looked like atrocious, but was totally the like middle school thing." And then I called my mom and I was like, "Mom, did you do this?" Like, and she was like, "Yup." Like,
Uh-huh.
and I was like, "Okay, first of all, brilliant. But second of all, I use this example to be like, there might be times like this, and I also want to, of course, asterisk, like, not everyone's gonna have the ability to, like, go see a makeup specialist or,
Yeah.
go speak to a dietitian, something like that, the having conversations that might come from like an outside source that's a trusted source to be like, this stuff is appropriate, this stuff is not appropriate, right?
Yeah.
But it's something like with skincare, we also are just going to come down to like safety, right? And safety is a big thing where it's like these skins are actively not safe for your skin.
Yeah.
Maybe these things are, right? Maybe it's the Bath and Body Works products that are, just like the cleanser and, the toner or something that it just feels fun and feels engaging, but isn't the same thing as like we're putting on anti-aging cream on your face, right? Or
Yeah.
doing these full things.
That's a good idea to take them to place it like to the experts or whatever. Okay, so one thing that I did hear from some of the parents of girls is that they often have to think about self-harm. Is that something that
Yes.
you've had to deal with? And what would you tell
Yes.
a parent who is dealing with that?
Yeah. No, self-harm is unfortunately rising right now. And I think part of that is with social media. First thing that I also will say is I will say this a lot with social media in general is I'm like, if you're giving your kids social media, just know that they're likely going to be seeing distressing images. Some of it
Yeah.
can include self-harm, suicidality. Some of it can include just like people partying or drinking or, like more, I'll say adult sexual behavior that's not appropriate at their age, right?
Yeah.
And so, probably not all at once because that's just going to be overwhelming to a kid. But having conversations at, appropriate intervals to be like, you might see this online. You might see this online. I just read an article where, and explain kind of what you saw. And it made me think we haven't talked about this yet. So let's talk
I
about
use
this.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And so one is just having conversations up front and ahead of time, right? Two, more specifically with self-harm, like self-harm is tricky because it is a coping skill. And I know it's really hard to think of it as a coping skill because it is a destructive coping skill, right? But I kind of put it in the same bucket as like drug abuse, like avoidance of behaviors where we are essentially looking to self-soothe. And this is a fast and quick way to self-soothe because our body gets like flooded with essentially opiates. But like in the long run, it does more harm than it does good, right? And so coming at it at a very like calm but reasonable state of like, I see this is happening right now. Like, I know I can see that you were showing me that you're hurting, right? And this is where I'm definitely going to be like, have your kid talk to a therapist at that point, a trusted professional, a doctor, someone that can be able to like help guide them through because I mean, as parents, you're probably not going to be able to do that, right? That takes highly trained individuals. And so acknowledging though that like you were showing me you were hurting.
Right.
And I know that I can't fix this for you, that I want to get you into someone that can help you move through this. And let's keep this conversation open.
Right. That's good advice. So I think with kids, I mean, going back to some of the stuff we were talking about earlier, it's really parents finding ways to build and strengthen their relationship, to talk about some of these things early and often is something I've heard before. Is that what you would say?
Yes. Yes. I like that phrase of like early and often.
And one phrase that I've seen you say is that you really want parents to depersonalize teen emotions.
Yes.
And I think if I'm understanding correctly, that's what you were saying early on in our conversation, which you're going to name these things. So it kind of takes us away from the, can you expand on that a little bit?
And especially because, right, we talked about teen emotions are just up, down, all over the place. And oftentimes, like, I love I don't know if you've seen Inside Out too, but it's kind of this image where it's like she wakes up as like a teenager, right? And then she like very quickly like snaps at her parent and they're like, what just happened, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes for the kid, it's like they're doing that too, where they're like, oh my God, like that came out like way harsher than I intended it. And as adults, we do that as well, right? Except oftentimes we could be like, sorry, I'm just stressed or I'm just this, right? We can kind of like buffer it. And so teens don't have that ability to buffer it yet. So it is just all coming out in this like vomit way. And they can like oftentimes watch them doing it and not be able to stop it, right?
Oh, that's
and so part of it is just like, this is not about you most of the time. It's about like, I'm so stressed. I have a test tomorrow or like something happened at school that I didn't tell you about. So like oftentimes it's not actually about you, right? The other thing is like, if you meet that with fire back, now we just have two dragons fighting and like everyone's going to get burned, right? And so it's almost like less is more in those moments where it's like, and I mean, teens will even do this to me and I literally just go, nope, try again. Like, it's just like simple, short, like, we're not going to do that. You're not going to curse at me. Like, you're not going to call names. Like, try again, right?
Just setting the
You
boundaries.
get to be mad. Yeah. And this is where I say it's like less is more. They don't need the lecture. They know it's wrong. They know it's bad.
Hard not to
right?
lecture.
Like, yeah. Oh, I get it too, right?
Yeah.
Like my clients, I just like want to lecture, right? And like tell them all my thoughts and all my wisdoms, right?
Yeah.
And they don't care.
Right.
Because they know it's not okay, right?
Yeah.
And so they don't necessarily need to be reprimanded all the time, right? And this is where it's like, know your kid if this is a habit and a pattern, right? Like discipline might be warranted, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like as parents, it's just like, how can you set that tone without inflaming the situation?
Yeah. That's true. It's hard.
Yes. Yes. Everything here is like simple, but very, very hard.
Right. So, okay. If parents want to get stronger in some of these things they've talked about, if they want to figure out, how do they build their relationship with their teen and tween? And I know you're specifically on girls, but in general, what's your best advice for parents that are like, I know a lot's coming at me. I know I want to support my kid. I know they have a lot of the things they're facing. What would you tell them?
I think it's taking the expectations of who you want them to be off for a second, right? Taking the expectations of, I want them to be successful and I want them to be well-adjusted and conscientious and I want them to be all these things. And really just looking at like, where is your teen at right in this moment? In that moment could be like, they are all of those things. And that is wonderful and amazing. And we love it. And then the very next moment, it could be like, they are none of those things. And it is scary and terrifying. And then we come in with this fear, right? And that fear kind of becomes that like, now I try to control, now I try to punish, now I try to discipline. I try to like squeeze at it to make it better, right? But it doesn't. It just creates more tension, right? And so we really just want to look at like, what am I missing? And this is where I come back in with questions. What am I missing? What am I not understanding? What do you want me to know? Do you need to hear something or do you need to say something? And just kind of coming at the Socratic method with it to just understand where they're at. Because once you understand them, they're going to take the time to understand you.
That's awesome advice. This has been a jam-packed interview. Really wonderful to talk to you and to get all of this great advice for parents everywhere. So thank you so much for your time, Christina. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Stacey. I had so much fun.
Thanks to Christina King for joining me on Tell Me What It's Like. If you loved this episode, please go and leave a review in your podcast app. Next week, meet Laurie Jacobson, who spent 22 days in a monastery in silence. I'm Stacey Rain. Thanks for listening.